Okay, dear participants, I will start the recording, and I hope you are all ready.
Recording started.
Hello, everybody. This is Marijana Smolčec from small town of Ogulin, Croatia. I'm one of your Week 3 moderators, and welcome to another live session at BO 2013. Today's speaker is Graham Stanley. Before we give Graham a mic, I would like to ask first Teresa, our coordinator of Becoming a Webhead 2013, just to say a few words, and then Ayat is going to formally present Graham, as she had also the opportunity to meet him last year. Okay, so Teresa, your mic is yours.
Everyone, and welcome. A special welcome to Graham, whom I met, I think, back in 2005 in Lisbon. As I said, I was trying to find a photo, but it's not handy. I'm very sorry about that. Oh, great, Graham. I'm glad I'm right about the date. Anyway, Graham came to Lisbon for a British Council sort of conference or something, and we met one evening for dinner, and we had a very pleasant time. And then we met again in 2008 at TESOL in New York, and that time Isabel, Graham's wife, was with him, so we all had a wonderful time. So this just to say that Graham and I go back a long way, and I wanted to thank him for being here for us once again. He's been a very regular presenter with us for several years now, especially in a year in which we are celebrating our 10th anniversary. So thank you again, Graham, and it's going to be a wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for your very kind words. I was just looking at the web page you just shared with us before of the 10 years of becoming a webhead, and I see that I've been coming here since 2006, I think. So how time flies. So many people, and it's a real credit to all of the hard work of all of the moderators and the people on the EVO sessions. Just how well this session has become a yearly, an annual thing, and just how many people have benefited from it. So thank you to everybody. It's a great honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be here tonight again. I'm going to be talking about using social networks when creating your personal learning network. And I can see there are lots of people in the audience who are very familiar with this subject, I think. And I think if you can bear with me, because I think the presentation is generally aimed at people who are perhaps a little bit unfamiliar with personal learning networks. But what I hope to do is perhaps get through some of these slides and then open up a discussion about PLNs to the floor, which would be quite nice, especially as I know that quite a few of you are familiar with A Planet, the project that I want to focus upon, which the funding of which has just come to an end. I'm going to move on to the second slide now. I hope you can see it. A Planet was a project that started just over 2 years ago, and it was a European Union funded project for language educators all over Europe, although we did have people join us from outside of Europe as well. And the idea was to try and use internet social networks to help people build a personal learning network. Basically, language educators, and I think you can find out more about the project at this link here, aplanet-project.eu, and we have lots of resources and the community, which, although the funding of the project is now finished, the project we're hoping will continue for many years more, and will provide resources for people. It's basically a project that has a community, a social networking community, and tries to, in the same way that webheads do, be a supportive community for language educators who want help to learn together. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Some of the things that we have been discussing and moving forward on with A Planet. But why should educators network? Well, I don't know if you can see this slide very well. I think the quality is not fantastic, but there are a number of different reasons. What I'd like you to do now is what you think about this. Why do you think networking for educators is important? If you could type something into the chat room now, that would be useful. Be it something that's already written on the slide or something which isn't. What is important for you about networking with your colleagues, particularly online, but not only online? Good. So I can see lots of things coming through now. A lot of people learning from each other, putting together projects, connecting with other professionals, collaboration, sharing about teaching methods, feeling less lonely, yes. Sharing ideas, professional development, enhancing our careers. Okay, so there are lots of different reasons why you might want to connect with other educators. And I think a lot of us benefit from this, not only when we come face to face with the educators that we work with, perhaps if you work in a language school or university or primary or secondary school, but also online. And one of the most fantastic things I think for me, for my professional development, has been the ability to share with colleagues from around the world, to make new friends such as Teresa and all of the other webheads, and be able to share our experiences, help each other, support each other, and really become friends as well, which I think it cannot be underestimated. So I'll be talking to begin with about the concept of a personal learning network, or PLN. This concept, as far as I can work out, has developed from another concept, which is a PLE, and the personal learning environment, which is what PLE stands for, is basically about the tools that you use to connect with people. Over the years, this idea of a PLE became transformed more into personal learning network, I think, because most people feel that it's the people that's the important thing, not the tools that you use to connect to them. Of course, online, the tools that you use are the reason why you can connect to them. But I think the emphasis upon the PLN part is very important. And these are some of the reasons why you might want to connect with people. Now, PLEs, I think, developed out the fact that LMSs, or VLEs, virtual learning environments, were basically, if you've had any experience of these, and Moodle is just one of them, perhaps if you have been connected through a VLE or a LMS, you can type into the chat room which one you connected to people through. They're generally institutionally managed systems, as it says here. So they're systems which are set up by schools or universities or other organizations, and teachers and learners join them. And they work very well. They're very good for teachers, especially for online learning or blended learning, because they have a range of tools which allow you to test students and bring them together, and you can monitor progress and see how much they participate. And I think they're fantastic for courses, but they're not really very good for lifelong learning, for more extended.
Recording in progress.
So Twitter has really gained ground as being a sort of hub for personal learning environments, personal learning networks. And I'll be concentrating quite a lot on Twitter later because of this, I think. But you might also have a blog, an e-portfolio, another kind of microblog, or a number of other tools which you use to connect to people and learn. This goes without saying. It's for learners and teachers alike. So let's have a look at PLEs and PLNs. This is perhaps three important parts of my personal learning network or personal learning environment. Twitter is a very important part. Facebook is too. These are the main tools which I use to connect to people. And then, of course, I have a blog. I actually have a number of blogs which I use to write and share about the things that I'm interested in. And I think these three things are probably the hub for me of my PLN, or rather my PLE, connecting to people through them. Then, of course, there are lots of other ways of connecting to people, such as the web heads, lists, and other mailing lists and other social networks specifically for educators, of course. One of the things that makes it very confusing, I think, to a lot of people when they start out, and the main reason why we began to become interested in the A-Planet project was because of just the number of tools that you can use to go online and do things, to share things with people and to connect with people. It's really incredible just how many things there are out there. And of course, nobody can actually use them all. And it's very, very difficult, as Karen says in the chat room, to know which tools are good to use. And one of the reasons why, if you're interested in technology with learners or connecting with other teachers or for any reason, then to share information and advice about these tools gives you a shortcut to a lot of to know whether one or another tool is useful for you. Right, I'm going to talk now a little bit about Twitter. Twitter started as something which I think is very misunderstood. This is one of the original splash pages for Twitter. It just invited you to tell people what you were doing, and so there started a lot of people just telling people what they were eating or what they were, where they were, or what they were doing. It started out as being a very trivial thing. When I first started over 5 years ago, I think it was just over 5 years ago, then I was really confused as to what purpose this had and what use you could make of it as a teacher or as an educator. And it took me quite a while to actually get to use it. And what really made it come alive for me is when I connected to a lot of people. As soon as I connected to over about 100 or more people, then I started having quite a large base, if you like, in my PLN, which I could read things with. And I also stopped being able to use it a bit like email, because I think what we all think about, what most of us think about email, is that we have to read every message, or at least look at the subject of every message and decide whether to delete it or read it or not. I think that's probably true of all of us. Whereas Twitter, I think, really comes into its own once you realize it's just something to drop in and drop out of. It's a conversation, a bit like the conversations that are happening in your staff room, if you have a staff room where you work. You can drop in, and depending on who's there, you can talk to someone, you can tell them what you're doing, you can ask questions, and then you walk out of the room. So you walk out of the Twitter room as well. And you don't need to worry about what goes on, what people are saying when you're not there. You just enjoy it when you're there. I think this is a good stress-free way of approaching Twitter. So you get started by creating an account and choosing a name, and perhaps as I think some of you are doing, you can share your Twitter names in the chat room at the moment if you have a Twitter account, and then perhaps we can all join or follow each other. My name's Graham Stanley, and I basically set up my account with my real name. So I know a lot of people have decided to use pseudonyms, and I'm very open, I think, about who I am. I use my photo, and one of the things that you should do when you create an account is make sure you write a description. You must. It's always a good idea to write a little bit on your profile just about you to give people an idea of why they might want to follow you. There's nothing worse, I think, if I see somebody who's followed my account and all I have is a name, especially if it's a name that I'm not familiar with, and I don't really know who this person is, whether they're a teacher or not, whether I might be interested in what they have to say. I generally follow anyone I can see as a teacher or anyone who's not going to be spamming me with real estate or insurance, basically. And the only way I know that is if I get through this description. So I definitely recommend that. So set up the account, write a description, add a photo, and then join in the conversation. I think Jose Antonio has just said that he's very picky about who he follows on Twitter. I think there are lots of different ways you can approach Twitter. I'm really not picky. I generally follow as many people as I think I can that I might be interested in. I'm not expecting to read everything says, but I do think having a very large number of people who I can then ask questions to or who I can maybe learn from is in my interests, and not just specifically English teachers. A broad range of people I think is worthwhile following. But that's just me. And Catherine, I don't spend all day on Twitter. In fact, I spend less time on Twitter than I used to. I just drop in there from time to time these days. But as I said, it's the same thing as a staff room. I don't really spend all my time in the staff room. I go in there when I want to associate with colleagues, when I want to talk to people, when I want to share things, when I've got something to say or want to hear or want advice or help. And that, I think, is how I treat Twitter. So set up an account, post your first message, and join in the conversation. Don't hold back. Don't just read. I think it's important just to join in. There's nothing to lose here, and generally people are very supportive. If you connect to other educators and join in to chats, I think people will be very welcoming, and you'll be surprised just how easy it is to make friends and share things with your colleagues, just as it is in the Becoming a Webhead session. So I follow lots of people. This slide was taken quite a while ago. I've got over 5,000 people that I follow now, and but then that's not bad from the point of view I've been connected in Twitter for over 5 years. So I think rather than try to sort of build up a network of thousands or hundreds of people very quickly, I've just let it happen organically. And as people find me, they follow me and I follow them. And I think once you follow people and decide that those people are worthwhile listening to or sharing things with, then quite often you find out who they follow, and you find a group of people that have similar interests, and that's probably one of the best ways you can do it. The discussions are one of the best parts about Twitter, I think, especially if you don't go in there a lot. You have a number of different discussions which are usually marked by these hashtags. So there are a few there. One of the most interesting ones, which I think is appropriate to everybody, and I believe Marissa is in the, yes she is, hello Marissa, in the chat room at the moment, and perhaps Marissa you can share the ELT chat web address. ELT chat happens on a Wednesday twice a week, 2 different times, and I think they have organized chats. The transcripts are saved and summaries written, and even if you don't join in live to these chats, I think you can really appreciate them by there are a number of times that I haven't been able to join in to an ELT chat, but I've gone and looked at the archive and really benefited from very specific chats. For example, one on specific needs. Recently, before Christmas, I was looking for information on a student we have in our centre in Barcelona who's dyslexic, and I was able to get a lot of very interesting information and advice by looking at the ELT chat transcripts. So I think it's a fabulous resource. There are a number of others, and perhaps if you're out there in the chat room and you know of other chats you can recommend to people, maybe you can put them in and share, by all means, any links to websites, if there are websites where chats are being saved or summaries written. So that's the chats that happen. One of the things that people find is difficult with Twitter, if you're trying to follow a chat like ELT chat with a lot of people sharing resources and conversations going on at very quickly, is how do you manage it? Well, most of the people that I know who use Twitter actually manage it through using a Twitter client. And TweetDeck, tweetdeck.com, is one of the most popular ones. There are a number of others. And again, if you have your favorite, perhaps you can share it in the chat room, post a link to it. I think TweetDeck's fantastic, but you have to download it. There are some people who may not be able to download a Twitter client where they work, for example, in which case you can use an online one. But what TweetDeck and other Twitter clients make it easy to do is to divide the streams of chat into different columns, and you decide what you see here. So I've got a column here on the left of direct messages. These are messages that have been sent directly to me. Then I've got my column of all my friends, so all of the messages come streaming up here, and when a lot of people are tweeting, then I see lots of these messages fly by. Then I have a group called Vital, and these are a select number. Obviously, with 5,000 people, I've got perhaps 100 people that I put into this this group, because they're people that I really want to read most of what they say, or a lot of what they say. I don't really want to miss what they have to say. So I've got this column which I've set up, which works for me. And then there are, of course, the public mentions, which are when you write to someone with an @ symbol on Twitter and use their Twitter name, then that's everybody can see it, but they are flagged as being this is something important to them, directed at them, but public. And then there's a number of other columns I have based on popular hashtags, and conversations, and things like ELT chat, but also on terms that I'm interested in monitoring. For example, I'm very interested in game-based learning, so I've got a number of hashtags searching for anything that people are saying or sharing on that, which helps me come across interesting links and resources and find people who I'm interested in following. Okay, the fantastic thing about Twitter, which everybody who is a fan will tell you, is that it's like having being part of a global staff room. It's really having always on 24/7 instant support. Once you start sharing things with people, they share with you as well. And this is all part of forming a community. The more you share with people, the more they feel that they want to share with you. And then it gets to the point where you reach where you can ask a question to the people who are on Twitter that you're connected to, and they'll be happy to respond to you, especially if you've responded to them. Like any community, online or in face-to-face, this is the basis of how it works. And I think it becomes a very interesting thing for educators to be able to do this. The difficulty that people find in starting is why we started the A Planner project. And as I said, if you, after this presentation, if you think, or later on in the week, if you think that you're still not quite sure about how to get started, or you want some advice and you don't feel comfortable about starting on your own, then either ask one of your colleagues in the Becoming a Webheads to help you out, somebody who is using Twitter, or join a group such as A Planet and ask for help from people there. We run a mentor system during the project, which try to put people with more experienced people with inexperienced people to help them with their finding web tools and being able to use social networks effectively. And this is something that I think is still going on, albeit informally, within our A Planet project. Okay, now, one of the things I really think you should do is don't be afraid of followers. Now, a lot of people make their Twitter accounts private at the beginning. They're, I think, afraid of being spammed or being found by various people who perhaps they'd rather not have to deal with. But I think you have to really, as far as I'm aware, make your Twitter account public and deal with the spammers and the other undesirable people, the trollers, etc., on an individual basis. You can quite easily right-click and block somebody. It's very, very easy to do. You can report them, and if a number of people report a person that is annoying or spamming, then Twitter does act and block and ban these people's accounts. It works very well. But I think one of the things is that Twitter really comes into its own, I think, if you do follow lots of people. And so I would, it's certainly my experience, and perhaps you can share if it's your experience if you use Twitter in the chat room, if that's the case, that you think that people should also follow lots of people. The other thing is that although you may follow someone, it's not a bit like, unlike Facebook, where you become friends and the relationship is equal. You follow someone on Twitter, and it doesn't mean, as it says in this cartoon, that that person might follow you back. Okay? Again, don't be upset about this. I think some people decide that they just want to keep the people that they follow to a very small number. There are other people like myself who pretty much follow anybody who follows me, unless I think it's somebody who's trying to sell me something, or somebody who I'm not quite sure what the person is. In other words, somebody without a description. But you might find that other people want to limit the number of people they follow. Again, as I said before, build your Twitter account, the people you're connected to organically. Follow the people that think the same way, and I think you'll really find the benefits of connecting through this. Oops. I'm not going to go through all of these slides, by the way. I've got some of them there which I'm going to let you have a look at and read later on in the week if you're interested. Some of them are just there for reading. But what I would say is that if you have the time, it's quite a nice thing if you're starting in Twitter to let yourself be distracted. Just if you remember the first time you surf the web, although it can suck up a lot of your time, if you do have the time available, it's something that really does help you get to know how the tool works. And you can also come across some very interesting people and spend some time socializing there as well. It's not all just about work, I think. In fact, there was, related to ELT chat, there was a hashtag called the night shift, which I think is moved to Facebook, which generally consists of a lot of people who like music and get together in the evening and share songs that they like. It started on Twitter, and now it's continued on Facebook, which is something I'll come back to later on, because I think the interesting thing about social networks is that people do generally move from one to the other and have a preference for different reasons. Okay, however, don't let it take over your life. Twitter can become overwhelming. Just try and use it, as I said, for what you think you may well have a reason for it. Try it out, see if you like it, connect to people, share with people, but don't become obsessed with it. I think with any new tool, if you use it a lot, you can become you can overdose on it, if you like, and I think that can provoke a negative reaction, which is something you want to avoid. Also recommend you learning the lingo. Can you tell me, anyone in the chat room, if you can type in what the hashtag FF stands for? And the DM, the RT, okay, yeah, Follow Friday. Follow Friday is something which people on Fridays share advice for others, people that they follow that they think other people might be interested in. So you might find a number of teachers share other teachers that they follow that they think may be interesting for other teachers to follow. RT is retweet. In other words, you send a message to someone, to your network, and that way perhaps you only have 100 people in your network, but somebody retweets it to another 100 people, that gets retweeted to 1,000 people, and sometimes messages can really go a long way this way. There are lots of other things. Again, don't be put off by this lingo. They're just shortcuts to interesting ways of doing things. Okay. As I said before, Twitter's not a chat, but you can find discussions on there, like ELT chat. If you find it useful, please tell other people. I think it helps. The more people on things like Twitter building a PLN, the better it becomes for everybody else. And of course, one of the great things about it is that you can use a mobile, and this means you can be connected wherever you are. There are other tools like Twistory that you can use perhaps in the classroom. And turning now to ways you can use Twitter with learners is interesting. I think you have to be very careful with young learners because Twitter is unfiltered. You can't find just about everything that's on the internet you can find through Twitter as well. But there are lots of reasons for using Twitter, and I'm going to skip through these now, which when I share my slides with you, you can obviously go back and have a look at these reasons for why people find Twitter useful. This I gathered from my PLN. I asked people why they thought Twitter was interesting, how their life had changed before Twitter and after Twitter. And I'm just going to flick through them now, not letting you read them. That means you're going to have to go back to have a look later on in the week if you're interested. I introduced Twitter to some of my students when I worked at university, and some of these students, without asking them to join, I just showed them my account and told them why I used it, and then some of them just joined. And gradually it became organic. A number of other students joined and started messaging me in English, which I thought was quite nice. It meant I got to know some of the students after class, and I even ended up sharing recipes with Carla, who is very into cooking. I'm into cooking as well, so that was really interesting. Music as well with Letty. We shared music tastes, basically. Then doing some investigating after this, I found that a lot of the students had connected to English-speaking students elsewhere in the world, and were sharing, were using their English outside of the classroom informally. And this I found was really interesting. Here's Sarah, who was doing that, and a lot of her Twitter account was written in English, and this was somebody who I thought was really benefiting from this informal language use outside the classroom. Ismail was another one, and again, I'm going to skip through these reasons for using Twitter, so we don't have a lot of time. Apart from Twitter, of course, there are other social networks which I think people are very interested in using. Facebook is one that I think now the opposition for teachers connecting to each other through Facebook is generally disappeared, I think. But perhaps you can share with us, or maybe we can have a vote about this. If you can see the green yes tick or the red cross, if I ask you to a question about Facebook, as an educator, do you find Facebook of use, of interest? Do you connect to your colleagues using Facebook? Just out of interest, I'm going to see how many people in the room do that. And I think in previous years, if I'd asked this question, I'd find a lot of negative responses. Okay, the people who have who answered yes, I think I can see some of you are connecting to colleagues, and some of you are connecting to students. And I think some of the, from what I can make out of some of the chat going on, probably the best ways to connect to students using Facebook is through groups, because then you don't have to accept them as your friends, and you can keep your Facebook photos and other aspects of your life private from your students, if that's something you want to do, which I would imagine most people do. There may be a policy also where you work that you can't connect to students, especially if your students are perhaps under 18. That is something that, of course, may well be the reason why you don't. For that reason, of course, there are other ways of social networking, of building personal learning networks with students. Here are some of them. I'm not really going to talk a lot about them, but having concentrated on Twitter, it's certainly worth mentioning Twitter or Facebook with students or colleagues, or Facebook or LinkedIn. LinkedIn, of course, is a more business-oriented social network. It's still very popular, and a lot of teachers find it very useful, especially for professional contacts. Then you have Ning. Ning used to be a free tool. Now you have to pay for it, but a lot of organizations and other there are lots of free Nings out there, which are private social networks for very specific groups of people, which a lot of people are connected to. And then Edmodo. Edmodo has become, at least with a lot of people I know, a lot of educators I know, the social network of choice. One of the reasons for this is that you can make it very private, and it looks very much like Facebook, and you can keep all of the classes private. One of the examples, and I can see Ayat in there talking about Edmodo, and I think a lot of educators are doing some fabulous things, connecting with their students and also doing classroom exchanges, perhaps connecting with other classrooms. It's very much like Facebook, and yet it's very private. So those are some of the social networks which I think, or I hope you will get the chance to experiment with this week in this Becoming a Webheads course. Just before I open up the floor to everybody, and I hope I can hear about from questions that you may have or comments you want to make about Twitter, about any of the other social networks, advice you want to give to people. Just going to remind you a little bit about the Planet Project, which you're welcome to join. We'd love to see you. And thank you very much. And that gives us about 20 minutes left, and I'm hoping that we'll get some questions now, and I'm going to hand over the mic to anybody who wants to either make a comment, share an experience, something you do with students, maybe you're using social networks or personal learning networks or anything else relevant to what we've been talking about, what I've been talking about today. So please take the microphone and let's hear from you. Don't be shy. Sorry, Marijana, we couldn't hear you say anything. If you want to write what you wanted to say in the chat room, that would be good, or try your mic again after changing the settings. Anybody else?
Okay, hello everybody, this is Ayat, one of your co-moderators for this week, for week 3. And I'd like to thank Graham so much for coming and for having such an inspiring session. And I have a question for you, Graham. How do you differentiate between Facebook and Twitter as social networks and, for example, Diigo and Pinterest, as I consider them also networks? I have lots to share, and I have even feedback from these websites with everything that has been shared. So it's like a network, another network. How do you differentiate between them, or how do we call the other side, the bookmarking tools that are giving us such articles and lots of stuff that are shared from people? So it's like another network that we share lots of stuff in. Thank you. And if anybody has a question, please just click the raise hand or write it in the chat box.
Yes, you're right, Ayat. I think there are so many tools that I think that's one of the things I find fascinating about the idea of a PLN. A lot of people are confused with the first word, personal, but for me it really is personal because everybody's PLN is different, and you can choose what you find interesting or useful and connect to people that way and share resources and with people. So yeah, I think you're right. Diigo and Delicious is one that I used to use, not so much now, to share bookmarks. And one of the things that was fascinating when Delicious, for example, was first sort of being used by a lot of people is that you could really get to know someone by looking at what they were reading, which I found particularly interesting. Pinterest I've played with a little bit, but I must admit it's not something that I've really got into a lot. So I'd love to hear about more people's use about Pinterest. And I can see there are a number of people who want to say something, so I'm going to hand over the mic again.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you please just write down? I have done my audio test again. Oh, thank God. Sorry about that. A glitch again, of course. Something has to do wrong with me. I just put my hand to see that if people want to speak, they just press on the hand. And it's great that you have a lot of questions written in chat. And also now I'm going to give my mic to Benjamin. We would like to hear you, Benjamin, if you want a comment or ask a question for Graham.
Okay, Graham, thank you very much for your presentation. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My question is pertaining for those who perhaps are first considering developing their own personal learning network. Could you, if you can recall, I'm sure you've been building your own personal learning network for some time now, but how you got started, which tools you started to use first, if you can reflect back on the rationale behind choosing certain tools from the beginning, to try to shed a little bit of light on the process that you thought of when you started off with your own personal learning network. Again, thinking in terms of those educators who are perhaps or just now starting using or developing their own personal learning network.
Good question, Benjamin. I think it was perhaps different for me because back in 2004 or 5, when I first met Teresa, really the only choice that somebody had who wanted to connect with other people, whether with a mailing list such as the Webheads mailing list for educators. So the communities of practice that had just started becoming influential, and then blogs. And as Teresa says in the chat room, we really met through blogging, and that's a shared interest in blogging brought us together, and commenting upon each other's blogs and sharing through our through the mailing list, the Yahoo group, was how that was my personal learning network. Really, my online personal learning network was that, and then gradually other Web 2 tools came along. I was introduced to podcasting, and then other tools. Really, the blog, followed by podcasting, and then microblogging through Twitter. Were the three sort of after the Yahoo groups and mailing list aspects of things. Those were the most influential things for me. And I don't really blog that much these days, but I keep going back to it, and I keep telling myself that I should be doing more of that. It's my ambition this year to do more blogging, definitely. I think since Twitter came along and Facebook, for example, I've done less blogging, but I do enjoy it, and I think it's a great way to share things with people. I do enjoy reading other people's blog posts as well. So I'm not quite sure if that has answered your question, Benjamin, but certainly I think the key for me to a PLN is definitely through a combination of having a blog and to write more lengthy, reflective pieces on, and being connected to groups of people through mailing lists or Twitter and other social networks such as Facebook, etc. Whatever suits you, really.
I may add my 2 cents. I would say that Graham, and you used it a lot, I'm sure. We also used Tapped In quite a lot, which was a text-based chat platform, and more than that, because we had a whiteboard, we had the possibility to add links, etc. And we referred to Tapped In until last year in the first week of fall, but when I read that in August they stopped accepting new members. It's still working. I was there yesterday, but they stopped using accepting new members. So I thought that it wouldn't be appropriate to tell our participants about it. Anyway, it was great because there was, and I think there still is, on Sundays the webheads used to meet at Tapped In, which was very basic text, you know, but you would see the text scroll by at enormous speed, kind of at the speed of lightning, and that almost made me give up on the first week of the workshop, the Webheads workshop in 2002. Anyway, that was a great platform, and it did bring a lot of Webheads veteran members today together, and we made great friendships through it. It was really important. It was part of our PLN, PLE at the time. Then there was also, and I think this is interesting to mention, Yahoo Messenger. We didn't have Skype then. So we used Yahoo Messenger a lot. I still use it in the Becoming a Webhead, as you all know. And then I think that we went on to blogging in 2003, 2004, and that's when I really got in touch with Graham. And then I basically started using wikis more than blogs after I retired and started giving a lot of more workshops. So for professional development workshops, I usually use wikis.
Thank you, Teresa. Tapped In was some kind of a platform I also tried out. But I have a question I have written down during Graham's presentation. I think Flavia asked this one. Do you think a wiki, I hope you can hear me, do you think a wiki is better than Moodle? So, Graham?
I really like wikis. I've got lots of wikis. I generally use wikis not in ways that a lot of other people use them, which is for producing sort of shared websites, although I have done that, is I generally use them for quick and ready references of for information for workshops that I'm doing when I'm teacher training, etc. And I find it's a really easy way to put something online and share with people about a particular theme or when it's related to a particular time and place. So I really do like it. I mean, I prefer them to Moodle. I've used wikis a lot more than Moodle, for example. But I think they're all very different. You know, Moodle gives the teacher lots of tools to be able to test students, if you like, which a wiki doesn't really work that well for. So it really depends on what kind of teacher you are. Wikis are great for shared writing projects, and I know lots of my colleagues are using them for that. And again, Moodle tends to be something that an institution, organization has to set up before you can use it, although there are ways around that.
I also grabbed the mic again because Benjamin had a question about, I think, images. I suppose asking whether you are using Creative Commons images or something. Maybe he can explain that, please, Benjamin.
Sure. Basically, when I was looking through all the images, a couple of questions really came to mind. The first being, specifically, are the images that are used in this presentation, are they licensed under either a Creative Commons commercial license or non-commercial license? There tends to be two camps that I've seen, basically one for commercial use, the other for non-commercial use. And my second question is kind of along the same lines with regard to the chat. When a lot of these chats, whether they're through Twitter or they're through a conference such as this, when it's being published on a website, most of the time these websites are being licensed under a commercial, non-commercial license. So when we're participating in our own personal learning network, a lot of these licensing issues, I think, come into consideration, I think, when we start sharing, and if we're sharing on our own websites, whether or not we're respecting these licenses. So basically, I just had those two general questions about licensing and specifically about the images that you're using here, and then any other thoughts, Graham, either from you or from the participants regarding their approach to tackling these issues regarding licensing. Thank you.
Thanks, Benjamin. Yeah, you might have noticed as I was going through my slides, normally I put a reference to any image that I've used at the bottom of the slide, and I'm a great fan of Creative Commons, and I think I tend to try and find all of the images I use, I source them from images that have been posted generally on Flickr or on other image banks that where people share images that they're happy to use that are published with a Creative Commons license, as you say. So they are published with a license that the photographer or the person who's created the image give permission to use. It does take a little bit longer to source images, but I find something like Flickr, and perhaps somebody can share the link there in the chat room, is a fabulous place to search for images. And you can also search on subjects and just limit your search to, in the advanced search, to images published only with a Creative Commons license, and you can click between recent, relevant, and most interesting. And the most interesting button is the one that I find I get a lot of useful images for presentations, etc. While on the subject, there's a great website run by a number of fabulous educators, English language teachers, called ELT Picks.
I was in at nice TESOL conference today, and one of the presenters said, if you have so many questions at the end of your presentation, it means that you have succeeded, and it was a great success because you have opened people's minds to future reflections about your topic, and you did such great, and we had lots of questions, and you opened a lot of ideas for us to ask about. So thank you so much, Graham, and it was a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ayat. Thank you, Teresa, and everybody else here. It was a great pleasure moderating this wonderful live session. Graham was wonderful, as I have tweeted and posted in many the social networks, and I'm glad so many of you arrived and listened to him. As you know, when you all leave the room, I need to be the last one so that the recording is saved, and you will be able to listen later if you want, or for other participants who haven't met